Now, I want to give you the update on what's happening in the Middle East, and I will tell you, we're going to give you everything you need to know, but also look at what is a growing national backlash to Donald Trump's choice to suddenly launch a surprise attack. There are questions about the long-term plan, about whether there was policy planning and strategy here, and about something that has dogged this from the very first hours of the breaking news on Saturday. Why are we over there? And is it one reason or two or four? And why do they keep changing the reason? Today, the battlefield is clearly widening. NATO stating that it shot down an Iranian ballistic missile that was headed for Turkey. United Kingdom and France are sending out planes and ships. This is, at best, a skittish regional conflict, and at worst, something that could turn out into what we would call a regional war if multiple countries just start attacking each other. Americans are trying to flee the region.
It's very, very scary. It's a very scary, fluid situation here. I just feel like I'm in dire straits and I'm stuck here.
We're Americans stuck in a situation that we didn't create. We have no control over, and we want to go home.
It's really made me realize that all I can do is pray and trust God that He's going to get us home.
That's the impact on Americans who are in the region. There are also the Americans who have died. 6 now identified publicly, 4 of them by the U.S. government, 6 all told. We're working in a tactical operations center in Kuwait, which is extremely unfortunate because, according to the Post reporting, that area, which would have been in the foreseeable danger zone of this kind of attack, included them in a site that, as you see here, it says, had little protection from overhead strikes. Here was the Pentagon today.
This is what the fake news misses. We've taken control of Iran's airspace and waterways without boots on the ground. We control their fate. But when a few drones get through or tragic things happen, it's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad, but try for once to report the reality.
Very defensive remarks there from the Pentagon chief, who is, of course, famously a former member of the press at Fox. This tragedy, the deaths of these Americans, has been covered far and wide, including by many outlets that obviously have no agenda against Donald Trump. There is reporting that he's firing back at what is basically become, in his view, a mutiny on the right over Iran. Quote, MAGA is Trump. The barrage of criticism is clear.
This is Israel's war. This is not the United States' war.
It is clearly Israel's war. Mark Levin wanted it. It's his war. Ben Shapiro, Lindsey Graham, Miriam Adelson. That's obvious.
I'm just going to be brutally frank. If it's going to be a hard slog, I mean, that was not pitched in the 2024 campaign. It just wasn't. We are going to bleed support.
I was promised that this wouldn't turn into a larger regional conflict. It's hard to believe it. It's hard to believe that at this point.
He was the No More Endless Wars candidate in 2016 and 2024, particularly, and this looks like an open betrayal of the base.
That's just some of what's coming in against the war on the right, including by pretty big voices. Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly are Fox veterans. They've worked at Fox News. They have a big following. And that's the opposition. The larger picture is embarking on a major war in the Middle East with little effort to prepare the U.S. public. Politico writes, is far from anyone's ideal election year strategy if you just want to look at the midterms. And that brings us to the news coming out of these states. Democratic turnout was high. There was a, quote, perfect storm, according to accounts in Texas, where Tallarico took the nomination, speaking tonight as mentioned. And then you go to what he's facing. Not a mighty incumbent with a war chest, but a Republican Senator Cornyn, who has been now reduced to having to do a runoff. Mind you, he's been senator there for many cycles, but he has a runoff with Ken Paxton, who's faced a ton of corruption charges. And that was against the highest Democratic turnout in 20 years there. Here's Tallarico.
Tonight, the people of our state gave this country a little bit of hope. And a little bit of hope is a dangerous thing.
That is one state. In North Carolina, you're also seeing that same enthusiasm gap we've heard about. Republicans say they're worried about it. Over 200,000 more voters there in the Democratic side than the GOP. Another poll has Donald Trump slumping 59% disapproval. His approval is down. That's an Economist YouGov account. This is a landscape that is already tough politically. That's true in all times when you have a second-term president facing midterms. It was especially true here for the reasons that we all kind of know. Donald Trump has not governed through the center or worked with Congress. He has done a lot of things unilaterally, even when Republicans are in control. He's faced a string of setbacks that can be dizzying. Sometimes people lose track of because there's always some next crisis or scandal, much of it coming from the White House. But he has been rejected in some of his ICE deportations. He has been limited in his efforts to put American troops in the streets indefinitely. He just lost his signature tariff war issue. Prices remain high. Off-year elections show Democrats in the lead. The turnout I just showed you has Democrats surging. And that's before launching a war of choice in the Middle East that to this day has not been explained coherently, consistently, or directly by the president to the public, to the military, let alone an address to Congress. And so right now tonight, we take this in at this moment, and we have invited a special guest for a special conversation to make sense of it. Governor Howard Dean has lived these issues in politics. He is, of course, a former governor and DNC chair, but he rose to national prominence as a presidential candidate who shook up the Democratic race in 2003 with clear early opposition to the Iraq War.
I opposed the war from the start because I want a foreign policy consistent with American values.
There is a fundamental difference between the defense of our nation and the doctrine of preemptive war.
The administration launched the war in a wrong way at the wrong time. The capture of Saddam is a good thing, which I hope very much will keep our soldiers in Iraq and around the world safer. But the capture of Saddam has not made America safer.
Governor Dean, welcome. We specifically picked that last quote because you made the point that a bad leader falling can be good. It doesn't mean that Americans are any safer at home. How do you view that in the context of Trump saying Khomeini was 86 and they got him out, so this is a good thing for America?
Well, we don't know if it's going to end up being a good thing for America because Trump seems unable to tell the truth about what his motivations were. I think that one thing I would agree on is that Iran is a bad, dangerous place that has been causing a lot of trouble in the Middle East for a long time, not to mention supplying the Russians with drones and so forth to attack Ukraine. The problem is that the president has no capacity to lead. His MO is bombast. He doesn't care what the legalities are. His legal counsels, if he has one, are just completely terrified of giving him any advice. Hegseth is a total lightweight, it appears. So we're sort of doing something that may make sense in the long run just by accident. And it may not make sense in the long run. I think bombing a school and killing 150 kids is probably not a great way to start off being the good guy in this one. The biggest problem I think Trump faces is he doesn't have the American people behind him, and he's violated the law and the Constitution. You do not launch attacks of this nature, which is an all-out war, without Congress. And I think Congress is going to get sick of this pretty soon. The Republicans are terrified of Trump. As we go into get closer and closer to midterms, they're also going to be terrified of losing their job. And you can see that something like 30 people have already said they're not going to run again, and I don't blame them.
Yeah, it's really striking because we mentioned that you went through this politically, and the things you were initially saying, there's the wisdom of foreign policy we can debate, and then there's the politics. And the Democratic Party seemed politically afraid to oppose the war. They called it Vietnam syndrome and a lot of other things. But after your election cycle, we got another anti-war candidate as the nominee, and he became a successful two-term president. And I want to show, before he was president, what Barack Obama sounded like. And this was the next cycle after your candidacy that I mentioned. Take a look.
I don't oppose war in all circumstances. And when I look out over this crowd today, I know there is no shortage of patriots or patriotism. What I do oppose is a dumb war.
Where does that history, as we 2 wars total later, Afghanistan and Iraq, look at a third preemptive or proactive American attack on Iran that may or may not spill out into a wider war? And do you see lessons learned either in your party or overall where, unlike Iraq, we checked this week, roughly 59% widespread initial opposition to the Iran attack by Americans?
Well, Iraq was a war based totally on pretense. There was intelligence in MI6, which knew very well Saddam did not have weapons of mass destruction, nor did he have an atomic program. So either the president, who I like, George Bush, or his people were lying. And they lied to the American people and started a war that not only went on for a long time and cost a lot of Americans their lives, but it also turned Iraq over to become a supplicant of Iran. So that was a particularly awful war. Afghanistan, which was also turned out to be a mess. I don't think that President Bush had any choice but go into Afghanistan. They were harboring the people who'd blown up the World Trade Centers. This war, first of all, I don't have any confidence in Trump's leadership ability at all. I don't think he thinks things through, and I don't think he has a team that's able to think things through. And the few people that are able to think things through are afraid of him and don't dare tell him anything he doesn't want to hear. I don't think they know what they're doing. I really do think, Netanyahu really did convince Trump that this was a great idea. Netanyahu is a lot like Trump, except he's smarter and more cunning. And I think that had something to do with this.